You're listening to
Sticky Note Conversations with Erika Washington. Way below acceptable. Way below acceptable.
On this week's episode,
and I said, we're going to see how fragile democracy is. And that is what we are seeing. They're putting profits over people. Holding office was meant for straight, white, Christian men who own land. That is who it was built for.
Way below acceptable.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to a new episode of Sticky Note Conversations. I am your host, Erika Washington, and I am extremely excited today to have this conversation with someone that I really don't get a chance to see often enough, but I have run into her in various places, including Las Vegas, and she is a Vegas original, actually. I'm so excited to welcome A'shanti Gholar to Sticky Note Conversations. She is the president of Emerge, which is the largest network of women elected officials and candidates in the United States. She is also the first Black woman to lead Emerge as of February 2020. She is a Las Vegas native. She is a grassroots organizer and an activist for women and progressive causes. And she has been doing this for over 20 years. She's had experience building coalitions and developing programs and engaging in community and political engagement. She was, before Emerge, the National Deputy Director of Community Engagement and the Director of African American Engagement for the Democratic National Committee, also known as the DNC. She has also served as the manager of national partnerships for United Way Worldwide and a political appointee in the Obama administration to the U.S. Department of Labor and the director of public engagement for the 2012 Democratic National Convention Committee in Charlotte, North Carolina. She has done so much in the world of politics, and it all started right here in Las Vegas. And now, as the first Black woman to lead Emerge, I am so excited to have her here to have a conversation with us. So welcome, A'shanti.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. And I agree, I do not get enough Erika time.
I know, I'm always really excited when I see you. I'm like, oh, there goes A'shanti. She's like all the places, all the time. And I will say, I do, covet your vacation pictures because it always looks like you get a chance to go somewhere fun. Hopefully more than once a year, but I know at least once a year I get to see your Instagram pictures of you somewhere tropical and just having a beautiful time.
Yes. At the end of the year, my friends and I take an amazing friend trip, and I look forward to it. It is something that really gets me energized, but also is my relaxation time. So I can come back in the new year ready to fight.
And that's actually a really important piece, right? Because, and we'll get into the work that you do, but to know that you have to take time off to rest, that that you have to take some time to reconnect with your friends and, enjoy life and not just continuously go, because politics and this work could have you on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, no matter the time of year, whether there's an election or not. So knowing that you say, halt, I've actually got to take some me time is really, really important.
It is, and you need it. We all need it. If you don't take it, your body's going to take it for you, and then you'll end up in a worse situation. But it's also something I really had to get better at doing, not just having that end of the year trip, but what are my breaks throughout the year? But what are my breaks daily? And that can just easily be, all right, it's time for me to eat. I'm actually shutting the laptop. I'm not going to be on my phone. I'm just going to enjoy my food. If the weather is nice, can I actually take this call while walking? Get off Zoom, go back to a phone call. And honestly, even that self-care is just talking to my therapist. I'm really big on us making sure we protect our mental health. So it's those really big things that we do, but those small everyday things are just as important.
I mention my therapist all the time on here. She is a lifeline for me and reminds me of, what it is I need to be doing versus what sometimes I am doing. And I'm such an advocate of therapy for everybody. I think it should just be a part of our natural wellness, having those annual checkups and, mammograms and colonoscopies, whatever else. Therapy should just be mandated so that, because our brains and our mental health and mental capacity is just as important as our physical.
Absolutely. And I really lucked out. I found my therapist on the first try. She is absolutely amazing and she keeps me in check. When we have our session, she's like, all right, I'm looking at all these Instagram posts. You're out here ripping and running. When's the vacation? When's the down day? When are you doing that? So there's also that person who will just like force you to also think about it, who sees you doing so much and wants to ensure that you're taking care of yourself. So I absolutely love my therapist.
Well, lucky you that you found one on the first try. That I didn't have,
Oh,
but we have now. I've found a committed relationship that she can't get rid of me. So
that's how I feel.
So I want to take a step back and talk about your childhood. You grew up in Vegas, correct?
Yes, I did. I'm a Vegas girl.
So what was it like for folks who have never lived in Vegas or those who didn't grow up in Vegas? People are always really curious. What's a childhood like in Las Vegas?
Very normal. And I think it's just so funny. And this happened more once I got older and I would travel out of state for different conferences and conventions. People would say, oh, what hotel do you live at? Oh, is your mom a cocktail waitress? Is your dad a poker dealer? And it's like, what? No. We call it Las Vegas Strip because it's just a strip of land. It's Las Vegas Boulevard, but we all have very normal lives. I grew up most of my time with a single mother, and I have two younger brothers. And the Las Vegas that exists now, it definitely wasn't the Las Vegas that I grew up with. And I love seeing how it has changed. And I think a lot of that has to do with the great women we have in elected office. And I know we'll talk about that, but super normal. And it was just as a child that one day I discovered C-SPAN, have no idea how I found it, but I loved watching these people argue and fight about how to make the country better. Right now, Senator Booker's filibuster is going on, and it is giving me absolute life. It is just so good, and I'm glad that he's doing this. I just fell in love with this thing called politics, though I didn't know what it was at the time. So by the time I got to high school, I had a really great government teacher, Mrs. King, who really encouraged us to be politically engaged. She was that government teacher that for your 18th birthday, she gave you a voter registration form. That was her gift. And then I just continued to just stay involved in politics. When I went to college, I was at UNLV, got more involved with the Nevada Democratic Party, and that just really put me on the path here. So my childhood in Las Vegas, very normal. I was a book nerd. I did Air Force Junior ROTC, so I was a ROTC nerd. And then I did politics. But, growing up in Las Vegas, I'm glad my nieces and nephews actually get to grow up in a better Las Vegas and a better Nevada than I did.
So when you got off to college, did you know that you wanted to ultimately end up in DC, or where did you think your life was going to take you?
I honestly had no idea because, watching C-SPAN, even being involved in Nevada politics, there weren't a lot of Black people. There weren't a lot of political opportunities. I just knew that I loved volunteering. I loved knocking the doors. I loved hearing from our elected officials. But when you don't see those people that look like you, it does make you think, is this for me? Do I have a place in this political movement? And I just got very fortunate to have women who saw things in me that I didn't see in myself, such as Congresswoman Shelley Berkeley. I got to do National College Dems and Young Dems, and that introduced me to the Colored Girls, who have now become mentors, Bishop Leah Daughtry, Donna Brazil, Mignon Moore, Yolanda Caraway. So I got to see them. And it was actually through making those connections that I was reached out to about taking a job at the DNC as the assistant to the political director. And that's how I actually ended up moving out to DC, is getting that call that there was a new political director at the DNC. He needed an assistant, and people thought that I would be really great for it. So just to even sit here now having this conversation with you, I definitely have come so far and never thought that I would be here, but absolutely love the fact that I was just able to take my love of politics and volunteering and turn it into a career that I love.
And that's amazing because, sometimes where we end up is not where we expect to end up, but still being able to end up somewhere doing work that you love and have loved for so long is not something to take for granted, because a lot of folks don't get that opportunity. And I say very often that I feel privileged to be able to do this work, because I didn't know it was a such thing, that this was a career in the first place, that I could advocate for Black women around policy issues that matter and do it on a day-to-day basis and have health insurance. So I'm grateful all the time.
Yes. You asking me that question, it's like I'm sitting here and I was like, yeah, for me, my life path was I was going to graduate college, go to law school, become a judge, and make nice with some president and end up being an ambassador to a really nice country. That is what I thought I would end up doing. But what I do right now is so much more fun.
Yeah, but I could see you as being a judge too. I could see that. And what's funny also is that we just had former Congresswoman Shelley Berkeley, now Mayor Shelley Berkeley, in her office here last night. And so we had a end of Women's History Month cocktail party. And so I just invited a bunch of dope women to come and hang out and have food and cocktails and just celebrate and have a safe space to talk and network and enjoy each other's company. And one of the first people to arrive was our mayor, and she's so much fun. She's so much fun. She talks about how much she enjoys the job. So fingers crossed that we'll have her on the podcast in the next couple months as well, because she's like, I'm working 12-hour days, 7 days a week, and I love it.
She is the best. I absolutely love her. So my nickname for her is Forever Boss, because she taught me so much. But also when I've been with her, when I'm back home at events, she still thinks I work for her, and she'll just hand me her purse and I end up staffing her. So I'm like, yes, you are my forever boss. But a big reason why I'm here is Shelley. And I was just so fortunate to have someone like her as my very first boss, to see someone that cared so much about the community, wanting to do a good job, making people's lives better. When she was a member of Congress, she flew home every weekend to be in her district. And I think we have to put that in context to some of the things we're seeing now when these members of Congress are MIA in their districts, won't host town halls, not even a teletown hall. She was the exact opposite of that. And I'm not surprised that she was the first one there, because whenever I was with her, we were going to be on time. We were going to make sure that we showed up to support people. And I thanked her so much for all the things that she would do for me. And she would just say, A'shanti, don't thank me. I know you're going to be in a prominent position when you're older. So just make sure that you pay it forward. So that's something that I'm always thinking about in my work, is how can I pay it forward to the next generation?
So let's talk a little bit about your work. You said that you spent some time at the DNC. For folks who may know the acronym, how would you explain what the DNC is and what it does?
Yes. So the DNC stands for Democratic National Committee. It is the big boss of the Democratic Party. And at its core, the DNC has one job, That is to elect a Democratic president. That is what it is there to do, to win elections. And it does it by the national work within the building, the collaborative work with the other party committees, but of course with the state parties that exist across the country. So that is what the DNC is there to do. And I started there on January 3rd, 2008. And I will always remember that day because it was the day of the Iowa caucus for the 2008 presidential election cycle. And whew, I just even learned so much that first day. And just to be able to work at the DNC during that year, I learned so much about the political primary process, about rules and bylaws, how different state parties operate. But most importantly, it's when I really fell in love with coalitions and coalition building because I got to work with the Black Caucus and the Women's Caucus, Latino Caucus, Asian Caucus, Veterans Caucus, and seeing how committed all of those groups were not only to helping their people and their communities, but to each other. I saw how important and crucial it was to the success of the Democratic Party. And it's one of the things that really gave me life and that will be a big memory for me during the vice president's presidential race is all of the groups that were for her, from your white dudes for Harris, your teachers for Harris, dads for Harris. She had such a wide and broad coalition of support. That's what she should have. And for me, it was a big picture of who we are as the Democratic Party and what is going to sustain us as the Democratic Party is having our coalitions who are doing the work and fighting to continue to make not only our country, but our party better.
And so I want to ask you about Harris, but before we get to that, I think about there's so many questions, and I feel like we've been rehashing over and over again, like what happened, why did it happen, the way it happened. Do you think that the coalition building that former Vice President Harris was able to do was because of her campaign or because of the Democratic Party, the DNC?
It definitely was her, because I think we can even take this back to 2008. President Obama, he had a great coalition. You know, it was what allowed him to ascend to the presidency. But there was just something very special about the vice president's race that made people want to be very vocal about supporting her. One of my friends, I'm going to shout him out, Ross Morales Roquetto. He founded White Dudes for Harris. I watched their very first call. The fact that they were just white men being very vocal about supporting this Black and Indian woman. There is something special about that. We have to be honest, we didn't even see men being that vocal for Secretary Clinton, but they were ready to roll for this woman. And it was because of who she was, what she's done as vice president, but also her commitment to public service, starting off as a DA. She tells people the reason why she wanted to become a DA is because one of her best friends was being abused by her stepfather when they were younger. So it was that commitment to protecting women that made her want to enter that field, to become a Black woman attorney general. Right now, I sit on the C4 board for the Democratic Attorneys General Association, and there's just so much work that our AGs do day to day to keep us safe and protect us that people don't see. That was huge. And of course, her holding it down in the Senate as the only Black woman there. She wasn't just fighting for California, she was fighting for all of us. So the vice president was a very special candidate, and we all saw that. And that is what made us want to rally around her as an individual, but also this campaign of joy, which is something that we all deserved. We were coming off of the pandemic, and we frankly all just went back into life as normal. Like that's what we wanted. We just wanted to get back to normal. And it was really just an opportunity for us to celebrate and be in community and come together. So I absolutely love Kamala's coalitions, as I call it, is a standout part of her campaign. And it definitely was due to her and who she is as a person.
Why do you think the communication was so bad for folks to be able to connect with her? Or was it that communication was bad? I guess in thinking about people saying that they didn't know her, or they didn't know what she did, they didn't know what she did as vice president, or just talking about she was a DA, she was a cop, and whatever. It felt like, one, there's a lot of misinformation, which I know can just be layered into posts and social media, and people can believe things that are said, but also more so coming from the time that she was an attorney general and to the time that she was in the White House. Why do you think there wasn't more communications around the work she was doing while she was there?
So there was. Her team communicated very well with what she was doing. She communicated very well what she was doing. And I know this because every day I would get emails about everything that she was doing, everything that she was putting out there, that she was talking about. In this national landscape, there was this narrative created that she was not doing anything. Just as the first woman vice president and being a Black and Indian woman, immediately the game changed. The bar was raised. No one was asking Joe Biden what he was doing every day as vice president. No one's asking Mike Pence. No one's asking Dick Cheney. But the minute it was Kamala, we have to know every single thing that the vice president is doing to make this country better. So all of a sudden, we just had these different standards. And I just saw that play out in real time. But it also wasn't shocking to me because with my work, I see how women constantly have the bar raised, the game changed, different expectations put on them as not only candidates, but elected officials. So if you really look at that national media landscape, they started from the very beginning with discounting what she was doing, all of her effectiveness. But if you were to look at state and local news, they were covering all of the amazing things that she was doing. She did this great HBCU tour that got so much press. When she was out in the states fighting for abortion rights, it got a lot of press there. But she cannot escape this national narrative that was immediately put on her. And as someone who worked very closely with the campaign, I got to see her doing all of these different interviews, be it TV, be it podcasts, the great Oprah YouTube conversation that she did. It was there and she was communicating. I think the real question is with this new media landscape, why was she not able to break through? And even as I dive into this work more, we're literally in the manosphere, and the manosphere is extremely conservative, and they are dominating everything. And that makes it extremely difficult to break through with what you're talking about. And I think it makes it even harder if you're a Kamala Harris and you're running for president of the United States.
It makes me think that maybe we become too dependent on national media to inform us and tell us what we need to know as far as national politics or international politics.
We definitely have to make sure we're broadening our horizons when it comes to what we're watching on the news, what we're reading. Something that I have seen become a big shift is people really aren't relying a lot on cable news for their information, or even your Washington Post, your LA Times. People are going to trusted messengers. And right now, that's a lot of people who have gone on to do independent media. I immediately think about Joy-Ann Reid and Don Lemon. You know, Don left CNN, Joy, the whole MSNBC thing. But guess what? They're still flourishing as those independent voices because they were trusted. And then you have very much these content creators who have become trusted voices because these are just everyday, regular people who love politics and want to share information and make sure that it's getting out. Substack is becoming very huge. And I recommend a lot of people Substacks lately over some of these national newspapers. We really need to be going to people who don't have an agenda and who really just want to share the information. And we see it right now under Trump 2.0 with the way that people are bending the knee in so many industries. They're putting profits over people. So we need to be getting our information from the people who actually care about the people.
Yeah, and I think that that is very true, that you can get on YouTube and you can watch Don Lemon and other folks, talk about the things that are going on, as well as Substack. And most of the time, this information is free. The other thing that bothers me so much are the paywalls. So when you talk about these major newspapers, the Washington Post and what have you, you might be able to read one article, maybe two, and then there's a paywall. And I just feel like I understand, like, as a former newspaper journalist, that newspapers need to sell in order to pay people and to keep things running. But at the same time, we shouldn't have to pay for our news around what's happening in our communities and in our country, because to me, it feels like a human right to know what's going on. But if you're asking me to pay for it, that there's a problem somewhere in there.
Absolutely. It becomes an accessibility issue to getting information about what is happening. And just even thinking about social media right now, right now it's free. At any time, they can start to charge us $5 a month to use any of these social media accounts. And that is a lot of money for some people. They don't have that access. So we really do need to have the open and honest conversation in this country about who is able to assess the news, who is even able to assess the internet. I still talk about how it is a luxury. There are so many rural communities that don't have internet access. During the pandemic, we saw the kids who were going to the Mac stores or were sitting outside fast food restaurants to use the free Wi-Fi because they didn't even have it at home. When we continue to just live in a society that is based on putting information on cable news that you have to pay for, with these paywalls, it makes it just very difficult for people to get the information and want to become informed. Like I'm very lucky. My organization, we have accounts for all of these newspapers. So I'm able to read it freely, but that is not the case for every other person in the country.
Yeah, and because they are expensive. I subscribe to the New York Times and the Guardian, and I adore the Guardian, but it all is still very expensive. It's very expensive.
I mean, there's been outlets that I've done interviews for, and then they'll send the link and they'll say the interview is up, and I have to pay to read an interview that I'm featured in. I think that says a lot about where we're at when it comes to the accessibility of information in the media.
Well, you won't have to pay to hear this podcast, which will be available on KUNV. You are an alum, and we air every Saturday morning at 9 a.m. on KUNV, and then also available on all streaming platforms for free.
Yes.
So I want to ask you, and this will start to get into talking about the work you are doing now. Why is it so hard to get a woman elected president? What do you think these hurdles are?
So I think about this in the context of the United States is only 250 years old. So we're literally a baby country. And since 2016, we have seen more women step up and run for president, and then also see two women have the nomination. We have to recognize the fact that that is progress. Like, that is absolutely huge. But it just goes back to the role of women overall in the political system, is that this system was not meant for us. It was not built for us. Like, politics and holding office was meant for straight white Christian men who own land. That is who it was built for. So we're coming in and we're disrupting this. But that means we also have to get rid of centuries of sexism, misogyny, racism about women and their role in society, especially when it comes to holding office. I know one day we absolutely will see a woman president. But even with the work that I do at the state and local level, it takes time to get a woman in some of these positions. There's still some states that have never had a woman governor, a woman senator. Like for me, the fact that Nevada has 2 women senators right now, I couldn't even dreamed about that growing up as a young girl in Las Vegas, thinking that it was possible, but it is. And this work just doesn't happen overnight. Even the changes in the Nevada state legislature, that didn't happen overnight. That was consistently doing the work to recruit and train women to run for office, to let women know that they belong here and shift societal norms. So I know it absolutely will happen, and it will happen as we continue to normalize seeing women in elected office. And that means we have to increase the number of women who are in elected office in states across the country.
You think you'll see it in our lifetime?
I definitely think so. I definitely think so. I mean, it does break my heart for the women who won't. That was definitely one of the many hard things about the vice president's loss is all of those women who said, man, I'm not going to see it. But then saying to me like, A'shanti, I know you will see it because you are doing the work for us to see it. And that really starts with having these women who start running for office at the state and local level and then ascend to these federal positions. Like, I'm a realist, but I'm also very much an optimist. And I know that we will get there one day. And just the vice president's race alone, it did energize a new generation of women to step up and continue her legacy. And I would be worried about us not seeing a woman president if that didn't happen, but it did happen. And that continues to show the power of women as a political force in this country.
You're listening to
Sticky Note Conversations with Erika Washington.
So let's talk a little bit about Emerge. Knowing that you've already laid the foundation in the conversation around normalizing and knowing that this country wasn't built for us and the mechanics of politics and government weren't built for women, and certainly not women of color, to engage in. And we had to do so much fighting just to get the right to vote, right? And so to have an opportunity to actually run, how did Emerge come about for someone to say, you know what, we actually need to build a training course of some kind that would actually give women the tools they need so that they can join into this system and help break the glass ceilings and change the landscape?
Yes. So we are actually celebrating 20 years of Emerge National in 2025, which is so exciting. But we started in 2002 in California, and our co-founders were really good friends with Vice President Harris when she was running that very first race for DA. And they saw all the ins and outs that went into running for office, and that it was extremely difficult, but that women not only needed the help with getting a campaign up and going and managing it and talking to voters, but they also needed that network of support. So that's how Emerge emerged in California in 2002. And our national organization was created in 2005 to replicate the program. And we've been extremely successful. We really focus on doing that in-depth strategic recruitment and training that demystifies what it takes to run for office. And we put women in a room with other like-minded women who are also going to be doing the same thing. And over our 20 years, we've trained over 6,000 women to run for office through our programs. And we have over 1,200 that are currently serving in office at all levels. We have 13 members of Congress. We have 2 governors, lieutenant governors, secretaries of state, AGs, mayors, state house, school board, water board, DAs, sheriffs, judges, auditors. We have it all. And that goes back to normalizing just seeing women in these offices and making change. And it continues to be an exciting time to see so many women stepping into their political leadership, but particularly those women who just really never thought about it before. They thought that voting was enough. But after this last election, it really showed them that, sometimes voting isn't enough. We really need to step up and do more to make change, especially when you're trying to fight a dictator.
How many states is Emerge in now?
We are in over 24 states where we have affiliates, but we train nationally. So we have our national training programs as well. We just finished up our national signature training program, which we recruited for during the election last year. And we ended up getting over 100 women who applied for 25 spots. So
wow.
that showed just even after the election in November, the number of women who were ready and stepped up to run for office.
Yeah, I was really curious as to what the numbers look like now that we are in what some would feel is the state of emergency, and with there being so many policies that are coming to light that will affect women first and foremost, and families. So it's good to hear that there are so many folks who are, ready to roll up their sleeves and learn how the process works.
Mm-hmm. And I tell the team all the time that, you know what, we're going to stay ready so we don't have to get ready. So that meant that we had our plans for a Harris victory, but we unfortunately had our plans for a Harris loss. And one of the things that we knew we needed to do was to bring women together in community and have conversations, not only to talk about what they felt in that moment, but what did they want to do next. So our community conversations series was extremely popular after the election, and we're continuing to do them. But I also knew that it was going to come in waves. This loss was particularly hard. This one cut real deep and it felt different. And it was going to take women some time. And I just knew that there were going to be the women who were very ready right after the election. There were going to be women who needed to go home for the holidays and just cuss out their conservative family. And then they would be ready to run for office. But then I also unfortunately knew that once he got sworn in, and we started seeing Project 2025 enacted, we were going to see more and more women stand up. And that's exactly what we're seeing. One of the new series that we rolled out is called Emerge Rising, and that focuses on women who were former federal workers, encouraging them to run for office. And just in 2 days, we had 97 women sign up to do that training and learn how they can continue to be civil servants, because that's exactly what they were when they were working for the federal government. And being an elected official is the next step for me, in my opinion, for them to continue to serve. These are people who know our government in and out. They know what works, but importantly, they know what doesn't work. And those are the people that we're going to need in elected office as we continue to build. So women are stepping up and running for office, and it's important for us to talk about it. So I'm going to be really candid right now. One of the things that is really upsetting me is seeing other women, particularly women elected officials or women leaders in the movement, talk about how her loss was a setback for women, because it wasn't. We should be so proud of what she accomplished in 107 days. And frankly, only a woman could do that. Like only a Black woman could do that. So women are integral right now, and we should not let that one loss define us and our role in society, and especially when it comes to politics and stepping up and having our seat at the table. Because what they are counting on right now is for us to be so upset about the vice president's loss that we just give up, that we say, it's not possible, it's never going to happen, just let the boys run things. Yeah, that's not working out for us so well, is it? And it hasn't even been 100 days. So women are stepping up and running for office. I'm going to continue to shout it, from the rooftops, but we all also need to be encouraging those great women that we know who should be running for office to step up and run, but also being there to support our women who are in elected office and giving them what they need to continue to be great elected leaders and to run for reelection. Because frankly, if it was so awful as so many people want to make it out to be, we wouldn't have elected any women. We elected over 400 women at Emerge in 2024. So when are stepping up to run, they are winning, and they are just so crucial to our success as a country, especially over the next 4 years.
What comes to mind is the amount of internalizing that I think, and not to make a blanket statement, but women can have in internalizing what went wrong and what did I do wrong, and like this is a setback for women and all of that, instead of seeing the bigger picture of how historic it still was, especially in that short amount of time. The groundswell was amazing. So thinking about Emerge, and also caveat to say I am an Emerge graduate, yay. And although I decided I don't know that I'd want to run for office per se, I still learned a lot, and I've made some lifelong friends. Shout out to my girl Electra, who I met through Emerge and continue to be close with. One thing I got out of it was the opportunity to understand and how to navigate some of the double standards. And so wanted to talk about, how Emerge is able to help women who have unique issues when it comes to navigating campaigns and holding office. So much is based on our looks. How much you weigh and what your hair looks like, and if you have children or if you don't have children, why don't you have children, that sort of thing. And they're asked questions that a lot of times men just aren't asked. So how does Emerge help tackle those sorts of things as women are contemplating the idea of becoming a public servant?
Yes. And I'm very honest about our work at Emerge. I wish that we could take the sexism, misogyny, racism out of politics, but we can't. What we can do is definitely make you more well trained about running for office, more confident when you're out on the campaign trail, and making it a lot less lonely. And throughout the program, this is why we have it set up the way that it is, being very in depth, bringing the women together with other like minded women, is because we tackle those questions. We know that they exist, it's real, and we talk about how to navigate it. I'm a co-founder of our Emerge Nevada affiliate, a founding board member. And I remember when we were doing the very first public speaking training, we asked the women, what is the thing that you are most embarrassed about that you think they would attack you on the campaign trail? And then that is what we talked about. And we turned it into a positive, because we have to realize the things that we may think are embarrassing or shameful or, oh, people will make people not want to vote for me. Those are still real life issues. Those are issues that other people have dealt with, people that you will be asking to vote for you, and it makes you more relatable. So we talk about the authenticity of just being who you are, showing up as who you are. Like if you're going to your debate and you're normally in your casual clothes, you're going to be, less confident if you're in a suit with heels, and show up as your confident self and who you are. Like those things do exist, but they are not roadblocks to us holding elected office. We just teach women how to navigate around them, to be open and honest about them, and realizing that at the end of the day, yeah, they're going to say something about your hair, your looks, like, why isn't she married? But it's going to be the issues that's going to drive the majority of the people to vote for you. And that's where you should really be focusing your time and attention.
Yeah. And I think the other thing that really needs to be highlighted when we talk about what it takes to run is also a thick skin and also the ability to fundraise. And I know that it can be sometimes harder for women to fundraise than men. I remember conversations during my time at Emerge about it being more difficult for women to ask others for money than for men to ask other men for money. And so is that something you all still spend time talking about, how to fundraise and how to get over those hurdles of asking?
Oh, absolutely. Talking about fundraising is a huge part of the training. I actually remember I went to go speak to one of the Nevada classes on their first weekend, and immediately they're like, okay, when do we get to the fundraising? And we're like, we're going to talk to you about it. But it is real. There is money in politics. I would love to see some changes around that, especially as we see Elon Musk drop $100 million into this Wisconsin Supreme Court race. But what women don't have in raising money, they make up in shoe leather and a good message. The majority of our Emerge alums actually get outspent by their opponents, but they still win because they're putting in the work. And when it comes to money, I always say there's two big things that I really want for women to think about. The first is that you do have a network. Your network is in your phone. Your network is your holiday card list, your wedding guest list. It's the people at your church. It's your sorors. You do have a network. And within that network, I know people will automatically say, well, they can't write me $1,000 check. That's okay. If they can write $5, $15, $50, those small dollar donations add up, especially when it comes to women running for office. That allows for them to buy social media ads, campaign lit, to hire campaign staff. Every dollar counts, no matter how small it is. So that's also extremely important to keep in mind when you are doing the fundraising. And then eventually you'll get connected to the people who can write the $1,000 checks. You'll be connected to the groups that will be endorsing you, who can write you the $10,000 check, the $50,000 check. So yes, the money is there and it is important, but know that especially if you do Emerge, we teach you how to raise that money, how to connect with people, and how to overcome any disadvantages that you may have in fundraising.
And that's also so important. And I think one of the things that I look forward to as we have more women winning and working in public office are the small changes. Having a woman who has small children, babies or school age children, if there are more of those, then there might be congressional daycares or daycares at the legislative level and access to time off that is needed. All things that Make It Work Nevada has been fighting for a number of years when it comes to reproductive justice policies. And that includes access to childcare and access to, all of the resources we need in order to live the best version of our life. And the only way we get that, it seems, is if we have people in office who can relate, who can understand what the day-to-day struggles and issues are. And as they are doing it, and you see it every now and again on television, you'll see an elected official, a woman who has just had a baby and has to have her baby with her, or needs access to a room for breastfeeding, that sort of thing. Things that just aren't something legislative buildings have had to make room for, that they're having to do that. And if they have to make room for it, then other businesses have to make room for it as well. And it's that domino effect that ends up helping all of us.
Mm-hmm. And that goes back to what we were talking about earlier, is there isn't paid family leave. There isn't room for parents to do nursing. There aren't all of these things that make it so great for people to run for office and be parents, because the system wasn't built for us. It was built for men. So when we do have women in elected office, it's another way that it changes the game and makes it more accessible for other women to want to step up and run. And I just consistently see this, especially when we have our Emerge alums who become parents for the first time when they're in elected office. They just realize there are no accommodations at all to help them because it's been for men or it's been for women who have raised their children and they're done. So now they're in their elected official phase of life. So there are just so many small changes that happen when we have these women with lived experiences in office. But those small changes are actually big changes because it allows them to have a broader impact on people's lives.
I remember not too long ago, the Grant Sawyer building in Las Vegas, which was the Las Vegas base for legislative work and where folks could go and testify during the session. That in the restrooms there, they didn't have any changing tables, nor did they have access to feminine hygiene products. And it's something that we flagged some years ago, and we were able to change that, and that they were able to add these things. And I'm like, but it's not just the women's restroom. I'm like, changing tables also need to be in the men's restroom as well. And so it's little stuff like that. And I think people don't think about that we can push for as someone who is, whether you're running for office or not, when you show up to a space, look around and see things through your lens and then advocate for what you see is needed because it will help not just you, but others.
Mm-hmm. That is so huge. Like, yes, we have to have it for the men as well.
Men change diapers.
Yes,
They
yes,
need
they
to.
do. But that just goes to show that when women run for office, there's normally a singular why that really drove them. But when they get in there, they care about the entire community. They just don't fight for women's issues. Because let's be clear, women's issues are everyone's issues, their family's issues. Men also benefit by having women in office.
So I wanted to ask you, in the time that we are in right now, what is your biggest concern as far as the current administration and the ripple effects that will happen over the next few years?
I have a podcast too, and we did a deep dive into Project 2025. So we see them implementing Project 2025 and just doing shock and awe, which is just meant to overwhelm us every day with despair. And my biggest concern is us falling into that despair and thinking that there's nothing we can do, that we just have to sit back and accept that they want to have the oligarchs in charge and turn this into a dictatorship. And we're just not going to let that happen. But I also recognize people are very tired, especially after the November election. So I talk now about how we can actually just infuse the activism into our daily lives. We can focus on the micro and not always the macro. So that can be if you go to church, you can tell people that you're arriving an hour early or going to stay late so you all can gather and talk about what would it mean if they cut the Department of Education? What does that mean for our community? If you are involved in a parent teacher organization, you can be the one to step up and draft the letter saying, okay, this is what we're going to send to elected officials and school board members about how these budget cuts are going to impact the school. If you're already involved in a social club or a community group, if you're going to a meeting, invite five other people to come with you to that meeting if they may care about what is being talked about and get them involved. So there's just these little everyday things that we can do. But most importantly, during this time, just every day we need to talk about how this is not normal, this is not right, and how we need to fight back and call it out and keep that pressure on our elected officials to do their job and to speak out. Because if we don't, and they're counting on us not to do that, then that is when we will fall down the dictatorship black hole that we won't be able to get out of.
I agree that we have to hold folks accountable, but I will say that I've always been frustrated by the thought that we have to hold elected officials accountable, that we have to, they spend that time wooing us, dating us, trying to get us to pick them like it's The Bachelor. And then we pick them, and then we have to then constantly push to get them to do the thing that they said they would do, and to advocate for the people who help put them in that position. And, it's one of the only jobs where that is something that has to happen, right? Like, you don't have to call your doctor and advocate that they see patients every day. And you don't have to call the post office to remind them to deliver everyone's mail. What is it about being an elected official that requires citizens, voters, to have to hold folks accountable to do the job that they were, that they campaigned and said they wanted to do, and that they're being paid to do?
Mm-hmm. So I will say at Emerge, our alums who run for reelection have a consistent win rate between 95 to 97%. And that is huge because they do their constituent services. They don't take it for granted. They are showing up year after year doing the work. And it's not just so they can get reelected, it's so they can serve. It's because they are actually there to be servant leaders. So those are the people who make great elected officials. But then there's the people who unfortunately forget why they ran, why they're there, and who they are accountable to. And I think the biggest thing that we have to start to do with those people who make it so hard for us to get them to return our phone calls, to pay attention, to show up and do their job, is like, that's when you run people against them. That's when you have to remind them. That's when you have to make them work for your votes. And then that's when we can consistently change politics and get it back to where elected officials feel they have to be accountable to their constituents. A big part of that is they just go unopposed for so long, they feel that they don't have to. It's that whole who gonna check me boo mentality. No one's run against me in 10 years. I can just sit here and do whatever I want. I can be beholden to donors, corporations, whoever is going to make my life easier and my life comfortable. So a big thing is, once you keep on them and make them have to work and do that job and be held accountable and know that you will replace them, that's when we will start to see an overall shift in how these elected officials, show up. But some people, there needs to be people running against them so they remember. Too many races in this country go unopposed, and that's how we got to where we're at.
Yeah. How do you define democracy? What is democracy to you?
For me, democracy is freedom, fairness, opportunity, justice. It's the ability to have all of those things in your life, to not only be able to survive, but to thrive, and to be able to do it in community with other people. And I feel I graduated with a poli-sci degree from UNLV. And one of the most important classes that I took was on democratization. And after the man got elected the first time in 2016, people said, okay, A'shanti, what do you think we're really going to see under his administration? And I said, we're going to see how fragile democracy is. And that is what we are seeing, because a huge part of making democracy work is people showing up, people being able to run for office, people having access to information and news. So for me, a big piece of democracy is people having the fairness and the ability to live a good life, but for us also to have a government that's going to work for us.
Do you think we currently have a democracy?
We are a backsliding democracy, unfortunately. And we see that with these executive orders coming out. And I think we have to remember executive orders are not the law. That's why they're being challenged in court. But I think what is making us slide so quickly into a backsliding democracy is the people who are so quick to bend the knee and to fall in line and just want to curry favor with this president and his administration. But what is giving me hope is Senator Booker's filibuster. And have it on in the background is the fact that right now 52,000 people are watching it on YouTube. And
Oh,
that's
that's
just
amazing.
right. That's just YouTube. I know he's also streaming this on other channels.
Yeah, and Facebook. I was watching on Facebook earlier.
Yeah. So that is something that absolutely gives me hope. The people who are going to Wisconsin to volunteer for the Supreme Court race and the other races there and are making it clear to Elon Musk that we're not going to make this easy for you. You just don't get to drop hundreds of millions of dollars and buy these races. It's the young people who are really stepping up and fighting back and showing up at the town halls of elected officials and school board meetings discussing their future. Like that right there is democracy at work. And it's just going to be so crucial to us maintaining our democracy over the next few years. Like democracy is one of the hardest governments to keep going, and you have to keep at it. Is why I tell people my work at Emerge doesn't have an end date. There's no time frame for Emerge to be done because we have to keep at it. And kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier and how people were feeling after the vice president's loss. I addressed the team the day after the election, and I said, for me, her loss was just another big reminder that despite how hard all of us wake up and fight every day to make change in this country, there are people that wake up every day and fight just as hard to stop that change. So we have to keep at it. And that is what is giving me hope right now, is the people who are keeping at it.
Do you think that the current Democrats in office are doing the best job that they can? Speaking most about our federal government.
So with this, I come from it that I think we need different approaches to reach different people. I do not think in this time there is one singular, yes, this is the game plan. This is how we're going to win. I think you need a Senator Booker who's doing the filibuster. I think you need congresswomen like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Jasmine Crockett who are reaching people through social media. I think you need a Congressman Green who is going to stand up in the middle of the joint address and point his cane, a man with a cane, he has a disability, saying, nope, you're not going to take Medicaid away from these people, because that's what he did. People are like, wait, what is he yelling about? Oh my goodness, I had no idea they were going to do this with Medicaid. I think it's great that you have the federal leaders who are standing outside the buildings, demanding to go in and wanting to see what DOJ is doing. We have to meet people in different places where there are through different venues. So I do not think, in my opinion, again, that there's just one singular answer. I actually like what I see our federal leaders doing by taking different approaches. I think we see that with what Bernie and AOC are doing, with going out and doing their rallies, with the members of Congress going into the Republican districts and holding town halls. Like this is what we need. And unfortunately, the more that happens, it's just going to allow us to fully understand the actual game plan and how they plan to implement it. And that will allow us to fight back even harder.
Mm-hmm. How do you think the filibuster that Senator Booker is doing could help push back?
It is really important. And, I was in a group chat earlier, when someone's like, well, what do we say to people who are like, this is just performative, this isn't going to make a difference? And those people really aren't listening. Because if you listen to what Senator Booker is saying and the other senators, there's nothing performative about wanting to make sure that kids can have a hot lunch at school. There's nothing performative about wanting to make sure that our elders have their Social Security. There's nothing performative about making sure that kids with disability can still get a proper education. There is nothing at all performative about what he's doing, what he's fighting for, and what the other senators that are joining in are talking about. this is life. This is what is happening. And I think it is an amazing opportunity for us to shed light on the fact that in less than 100 days, this man has destroyed our economy. He has increased the unemployment rate, especially once we start to take into account all of these federal workers who have lost their jobs. And he has hurt our manufacturing. Like, this is, again, another tool in the toolbox that I think is being effectively used. And I have the chat on for YouTube because I want to see what people are saying. These are not all of his constituents. These are not all Democrats. These are not all progressives. These are people who are tuning in because they are craving information and wanting to see that someone is doing something. And I just give kudos to Senator Booker for this filibuster.
Yeah. And the one good thing about his filibuster is that he's not reading like the phone book or something like that. Because sometimes, you can get up there and filibuster and just read anything, basically, just to hold time and hold the space. But he's actually trying to educate while he is holding this floor.
It's so informative. And for those of you who didn't watch, definitely at least look at the clips on social media. I think at this point, he's going on 20 hours. So definitely can't watch the whole thing. But he's reading letters from his constituents. Other senators are talking about what they've heard at their town halls. They are laying down the real budget impacts of what he wants to do by giving these huge tax cuts, what is going to mean to Americans, especially everyday Americans. This is a master class in what is happening right now. And it's so informative, so educational. And the C-SPAN girly junkie in me is just absolutely loving it.
Yeah. And as you said, thinking about, how imperative it is for folks to be engaged in understanding what the ripple effect of current policies and changes, tariffs being added, that sort of thing, that it's going to affect economics of everywhere. And thinking of Las Vegas specifically, I was having a conversation with someone the other day about Las Vegas is one of the places where they can feel the effects of an economic downturn almost immediately. Las Vegas is built on tourism and so over a lot of other places. But we know why people come to Las Vegas. They come to have a good time. It's the adult playground. What happens here stays here sometimes. So you have to have just money to throw away to come here, to gamble and drink and do all the fun things. And so when folks don't have that money, they're not coming. And if they're not coming, that means that folks who live here, their income is directly affected. And then the children who live here, we're the 5th largest school district in the country. And so that's more than 350,000 children just in Clark County School District. And those children can end up without whatever that is, food, shelter, clothing, what have you. So, Las Vegas can really feel the brunt almost immediately. And I think that's really scary.
Mm-hmm. This administration, they're just about their taxes, tariffs, and terminations. That's what they're doing. But it's not even just going to impact the people who live in the country who come to Las Vegas and help sustain our way of life there. And I still say our because my family lives there still. So it's extremely important to me to make sure that Las Vegas, basically Nevada, has a strong economy. But everything that's happening with immigration, other countries are warning people not to come here. And we know we also get lots of international visitors, but they don't feel safe. So it's not just as if it's going to be a U.S. downturn in tourism to Las Vegas. It's going to be a global downturn of tourism to Las Vegas. And we all need to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to fight back, because the economic hit, it's really going to hurt this time around.
Would you ever run for office? I mean, you've been training folks for a long time. You've been working on training folks for a long time and training people to train people.
I always say never, but I absolutely love being the hype woman of the women who are running for office. I think that is what I was put here to do, to serve in this capacity and to help support women, uplift women, and to support the amazing things that they're doing in elected office.
And before we go, I always ask folks this question. So I want to ask you, what is your version of the American dream?
For people to live the life that they want. Now, I think that's what it is. I think there's people like us. We get to do this great activism and community work. There's people who just want to chill on a farm and raise their animals. There's people who want to be actors and singers. I really think the American dream is for people to be able to live the life that they want to live and enjoy it.
And I think that's beautiful. I completely agree that having choice and autonomy is a definite part of the American dream for me.
Mm-hmm.
I want to thank you for taking the time to speak with me today, to have this conversation. It's been a long time coming, but I know as the president of Emerge, you are a busy, busy lady, and I appreciate any time you're able to carve out to chat about what's going on. And so hopefully we're able to do it again sometime soon. And yeah, I'm always in awe of how elegant and beautiful you are and just willing to, take the time to educate folks on what's happening in this world. So you are a treasure, and I'm so thankful, A'shanti, for you being a guest on Sticky Note Conversations.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This has been so much fun. Like anything for you. I'm so glad we were able to get this scheduled. And just thank you to all the listeners for tuning in and supporting Erika and the great work that she does.
Yay, thank you. Before we go, though, so you mentioned your podcast. I want to make sure I mention it, The Brown Girl's Guide to Politics. Do you have a new season coming out? Will you be continuing?
We will have a new season coming out shortly, but in April, we're going to be dropping a very special bonus episode from the very first gathering of the Persist Network, which was founded by Rhonda Fox, who was the Women's Coalition Director for Harris Walls 2024. She wanted to keep all of that energy going, and she created Persist. And we held our very first in-person event in New York City. We were hosted by Diane von Furstenberg at her studio. We were joined by Gloria Steinem as a special guest. And I was able to do a panel with Sunny Houston and Anna Navarro from The View. And we recorded some of that. We talked to some of the participants. So everyone will be able to hear that episode soon.
Oh, that's exciting. So you said that'll drop in April?
It will drop in April.
Okay. Well, I will make sure we have that linked in our show notes to your podcast so folks can tune in.
Thank you.
That would be so great. Well, once again, thank you so much. I appreciate you, and we'll see you next time on Sticky Note Conversations.
Thanks for listening to Sticky Note Conversations with Erika Washington. Hosted and executively produced by Erika Washington, with editing by Black Gypsy LLC and Simone Endres. Special thanks to KUNV 91.5 in Las Vegas. This show is powered by Make It Work Nevada, a project of Tides Advocacy. And a special thank you to Grove GT Teague and Eno Savad, who made our new theme song, Way Below Acceptable.